But I've really been reflecting on that topic, right? And I'm thinking like, okay, well, when Bob can't stay home to help his partner Nancy take the kids to soccer because he has to go golfing for business, is he like, oh, sorry, Nancy, I got to go to work, got to go play golf with this guy? Like, it's really hard, but like someone's got to do it, right? Does Bob feel guilty about doing that? My guess is maybe not. Um, like people talk about mom guilt. You don't hear people talk about dad guilt.
Thank you for stopping by Nurture Small Business Podcast. I am your host, Denise Cagan. If you're looking for stories that lift up women business owners, both in their personal and professional lives, you are at the right place. As always, if you like what you hear on today's podcast, please share it. You have my gratitude for doing so. Being a businesswoman, I can tell you that sometimes it feels a little bit lonely. Today's topic, entrepreneur isolation. And I can tell you, speaking from experience, that sometimes it feels like you're on an island by yourself. The problems that you encounter are not things that you readily want to tell other people about. So it is isolating, and you're left sometimes waiting or treading water, trying to figure out what your next thing will be. Well, it doesn't really have to be. And today's guest, Melissa Wesner, is a licensed clinical professional counselor and founder of LifeSpring Counseling Services. It is a group counseling practice in Maryland. Melissa is also a brain spotting consultant, a retreat host, and the host of Dreaming and Doing podcast. So she is a fellow podcaster. I love it. This podcast focuses on big dreamers and action takers looking for weekly doses of inspiration. And don't we all need that? Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. I saw your post on the Goldman Sachs app, which is where a lot of my connections come from. And I was very excited. I was like, this is a great topic. We, as business owners, really can feel isolated. Mm-hmm. But before we get into that conversation, what the heck is brain spotting?
Yeah, so I absolutely love brain spotting. So I'm always happy to blab about it. So I'm a therapist, so I use brain spotting most of the time in therapy, but brain spotting can be used for coaching. It doesn't have to be done with a therapist. You can use it to work through creative blocks. You can use brain spotting to help you with things in your business. If you feel like you're dealing with imposter syndrome or something, for example. So basically, when you work with someone to do brain spotting, no talking is even needed, but you can if you want to. But basically, the person you're working with will ask you, what would you like to work on? And from there, they'll have you mention a little bit about it, but we're going to help you find a location in your visual field where you can best access that information as it's stored in your brain and your body. And you'll keep your eyes locked on that position the whole time, and thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, memories will automatically show up and allow you to process whatever information you're trying to process. So I use brain spotting with clients, but I'm also a brain spotting consultant. For people who are wanting to learn brain spotting to do it with their clients, I help them with a consultation so they can get certified.
So there is a certification for it. How cool is that? Mm-hmm. We might have to chat later about that.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So, Melissa, how did you get into the field of counseling?
Yes. I want to say not on purpose. I have a different undergraduate degree that is seemingly unrelated. So I took a year off and I did AmeriCorps for a year, and I was like, well, you got to figure out your life. Like, this is the year you got to figure it out. And I was debating I was looking at nursing school, and in the process of looking at nursing school, I found a counseling program. I knew that I had taken some undergraduate courses in family studies, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And so I went with counseling because I was like, well, this seems a little bit like more, I could be more assured that I was going to like the content. So It was kind of, I want to say, it wasn't necessarily too much on purpose. It wasn't like, oh, I always wanted to be a therapist. That really wasn't it. I feel like a lot of things in my professional life just led me down that road. And fortunately, it worked out because certainly I did not pursue my first degree.
And so becoming a therapist and becoming a business owner aren't always the same thing. How long have you owned your business?
Yeah, so I started my practice in 2014, but just like becoming a therapist, it was never on my radar to become an entrepreneur. Also, never did I imagine that I would be employing other people. That was also never on my radar. But, life is funny, and here I am doing all the things I never thought I would be doing.
So is that by any chance the inspiration for your podcast, The Big Dreamers?
Well, that is, yeah, I wish I could say that I dreamed all the things that I'm doing. I didn't, but I am a big dreamer. If I have just 5 minutes of free time, my brain is going. And so for example, like that's how this retreat in Costa Rica happened, right? I was like, well, wouldn't that just, I had some free time and I wasn't busy and my husband was. So I ended up scrolling and saw this amazing retreat center, fell down the rabbit hole of looking into them. And 2 years later, I was like, well, maybe it's finally time to do this.
So that was one of your big dreams. So when has it occurred or is it upcoming?
Yeah, I am actually fresh back from our retreat. I just got back from Costa Rica this Saturday, where we were doing a retreat for entrepreneurs.
Well, no wonder why you look so relaxed and refreshed. Tell me about it down there. I've never been to Costa Rica.
Yes. So we were at a private resort. So we were the only people there on the campus. We had the entire retreat center to ourselves. But it's beautiful. You're in the jungle, and it was a wellness-based business retreat. So it was designed to help entrepreneurs look at how wellness fits into business strategy because so many times we're like, well, we don't have the time. I don't have the time to take care of myself, right? Or maybe we're taking care of other people, especially if you're a female entrepreneur. You might have your family, you have your employees, and put yourself on the back burner. So just looking at wellness, not just from the place of like taking care of myself, but also looking at the idea of wellness as strategy for your business. So if you're the person who's not going to do it for yourself, but you're motivated for your business, we will give you information to show like why this is going to benefit your business too.
Interesting. I love that. A wellness retreat for entrepreneurs. And interestingly enough, my next podcast is going to focus on wellness as well. So,
Awesome.
and as businesswomen, the executive directors, the CEOs,
Mhm.
whatever titles we go by, we don't always take care of ourselves. And I even talk to my team members about this frequently, especially the ones that are, moving up through leadership and they're being trained in their roles. And, and I have to force them to take time off if they're sick because they're
Mhm.
like, no, this has to get done. I was like, it does, but if you're not functional, there's a whole lot of people that depend upon you that and not just at work
Mhm.
that this is not going to be a good thing for. So excellent. I just love this. So the topic for today was about isolation. And
Mhm.
I had run an event one time and I used the tagline, and I don't remember exactly how it was, but I used the tagline something about, business can feel like an island, but if you find the right group, it's more like an archipelago, meaning
Mm.
meaning that, hey, you got to find the right cohort or tribe, as I've heard some people call it. So tell me, what prompted you to post that post I saw in the app?
Oh, yes. Well, I had actually done a podcast episode on that topic, right? Because it's one that I am hearing about so frequently, right? And we hear this language also, right? We hear people say leadership is lonely. That, people have heard that line before, but there's a reason that that line exists. And so, it's kind of known that that's the case. And I also saw a stat, even as I was preparing for the retreat, because I think community is one of the reasons that going on retreats can be so impactful. And one of the stats that we found from an article was that 73% of entrepreneurs reported feeling lonely at some point in their journey as an entrepreneur. So there's a really high level of people are reporting feeling lonely. And I know for me as a therapist in our local community, it was interesting, kind of as we were coming out of the pandemic, post after post after post from people was talking about, I feel so lonely, I feel so isolated, I feel so disconnected. And so just hearing that over and over, um, it did eventually lead me to create some programs in our local community. And then later on, a retreat. And also, my personal opinion is that not all networking events or opportunities are created equal, right? Like sometimes you go to a networking event, it's like, hi, my name is Melissa and I do this. I work here. Nice to meet you. Here's my card, blah, blah, blah. And you never talk to anyone again, right? Some networking opportunities are kind of stodgy. Um, but we can learn to network differently and build community differently, which I've also been thinking about. Like, how have men been networking for so long in business, and what have we been doing as women? And also giving ourselves permission to build community in our businesses the way that we need and want to.
I think that sometimes what we view as the good old boys club, which is the men networking, included things that created community, like, hey, let's go golfing, or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're going to go have a drink and smoke cigars, which I think is really gross. But,
Mm-hmm.
but if
Yeah.
that's what turns you on, and I think in at times women are not willing to take that next step, like, hey, would you like to get together, have coffee? Let's, find a time where we can grab a glass of wine, or, what? I heard you say you liked hiking. You want to go hiking with me? So,
Exactly. Right? Because one, I'm not going to be into cigars either, right? I'm also not into golfing, but I've really been reflecting on that topic, right? And I'm thinking like, okay, well, when Bob can't stay home to help his partner Nancy take the kids to soccer because he has to go golfing for business, is he like, oh, sorry, Nancy, got to go to work, got to go play golf with this guy? Like, it's really hard, but like someone's got to do it, right? Does Bob feel guilty about doing that?
mm,
My guess is maybe not. Um, like people talk about mom guilt. There, you don't hear people talk about dad guilt, right? So there's a reason for this languaging, why the phrase mom guilt is so common, but you don't hear people talk about dad guilt, right? And so even for women to feel like to give themselves permission around community building, to break out of isolation, whether it is coffee, which is a very popular thing, like for therapists, like that's our thing. Would you like to meet for coffee? But even things that take more than an hour of time, whether it is a retreat or it is a long hike, whatever that is, giving yourself permission to do that and not feeling guilty because it requires you to spend money on yourself or because it's going to take time away from your family or your clients, but understanding that relationship building is good for you socially, but it's also good for your
mhm.
business.
It is. It is. I can honestly say, so I started my business in North Carolina in Charlotte, built a huge network and made some very, very good friends that we would very intentionally go do social things not related to business whatsoever. And
Mm-hmm.
some of it was hiking. And sometimes we would go drive through the mountains and go to wineries and just all sorts of things. So that's how I made my friendships, to be honest with you, because business is a huge part of my life, to be
Mm-hmm.
perfectly honest. Now that I've moved to Virginia, and I moved here fairly at the onset of the pandemic, so I was like 6 months into it, I have not gotten back to that level of comfort where I just feel like it's okay to say, hey, do you want to, let's go do something after work? I haven't gotten back to that point.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious as we're talking, because I'm thinking about someone else I know. Do you find that that's different geographically, right? Because you're in Virginia now versus wherever you were before. Did you find it to be different than like the networking in the community?
So there is definitely some difference, but I don't honestly don't know if it's because of the pandemic was happening when I
Mm-hmm.
moved here, or if it's just that, as I've gotten older, because I did hit 6 decades not too long ago. As I've gotten older, it's just a little more challenging
Mm-hmm.
for me as a woman to just put myself out there and go, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? Let's do something social.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like I said, I was just on this retreat and we're talking about wellness from a holistic perspective, but social well-being is an element of our wellness. And interestingly enough, that was one of the things that came up in our conversations was really how the pandemic has impacted everyone's social communities, right? And one of the things that I said is I think with the pandemic, it's like we were all so eager to get over it, like we don't have to wear masks anymore. We just want to be out. We don't want anyone telling us what to do. Um, but I think that there are so many ways that the pandemic has impacted us that we're not having conversations about it. We're not having conversations about the extent to which it's changed our lives and impacted us. And as we were talking that week, that was one of the things that definitely came up is our social interactions existed before the pandemic and that same regularity of contact and social interactions with people is not in place yet. Or even ways that people's other wellness practices have been interrupted and are not in place again.
I think it sprouted a lot of anxiety, and that's me just observing my team members and my interactions. I think it sprouted a lot of anxiety that might be coming because people, are concerned about, prevalence of, COVID never went away.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to. It's the next flu. It's
Mm-hmm.
flu 2.0. So it could be related to that, or it could be we just got out of the habit of
Mm-hmm.
doing those things. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we got out of habits, right? I think many of us probably got out of the habits. And then when you lose connection, right? When you're out of habit with those connections and you're not meeting with people as regularly, sometimes those connections dwindle as well, which might mean I either need to like reignite those old connections or put forth some added intention. Maybe I now need to make some new connections and I don't know where to start.
So what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. And also, just before I say, just to normalize, work with so many people who say it's so hard to find friends as adults, right?
I agree with that.
So many people say that. And even the younger working professionals that I work with, they're like, I mean, like, where do you meet people if it's not the bar? And I certainly believe that there are places that aren't bars. But sometimes I think for younger professionals, they're like, well, where? Um, so I know, I mean, if you're a business owner, I think there's a lot of things that you can do. I think one, you can find communities that you are drawn to and join them and become a part of them. So whether it's a chamber, the Chamber of Commerce, if there's one that's really active. For example, one of the things that I've done, it didn't exist, but I created it when I saw that therapists in our local community were saying, I feel so lonely and isolated, and I love hosting and planning, and I would like some fun in my own life. I created a clinician community membership here in Maryland. So
Nice.
people who live in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, literally, I plan a fun activity for us once a month. We get together, we do a fun activity. It could be candle making, it could be goat yoga, whatever it is. And we're meeting one time a month for a fun activity. But in the process, you're getting to know people consistently over an entire year. So you're building authentic relationships. You're having fun. You're not feeling stressed out about building relationships like at a networking event where you're like, what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say over that coffee? We're just talking, right? Like we have an activity that we're doing.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes if there's a thing that you want and it doesn't exist, you can be the one to create it.
I
If
want to
that's,
do goat yoga.
yeah, you can put that together. There are people who create meetup groups for business owners in certain age ranges. So you can be the one to create the thing that you wish existed. Or find a community that already exists that you think is really attractive. You can find communities that already cater to business owners. I know with the Goldman Sachs program that we did, my cohort was online and we got to meet in New York, and just being there in person together just felt so good. Our community is still together. We're in a WhatsApp group. And so and we still meet on a monthly basis. And so you can find existing programs or create the one you want.
Yes. My cohort, when I went through the program, was also online because it was the
Mm-hmm.
national cohort. And so when we got together, we actually got together in Boston. We did 2 weeks, I think, when I went through.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was two separate weeks. So one like about a quarter of the way through the program and one at the end. It was incredible. It was
Hmm.
great to meet those people that you were chatting with online. So I agree with that.
Yeah, and the other thing that's been really interesting to me as I've been doing a lot of readings about workplace wellness and things like that. And one of the things that has kept coming up is the role of in-person events and building trust. So, if we're thinking about the importance of meeting in person with colleagues, other business owners, for the sake of building trust, if you need like cross referrals, if you might need to do business together, just understanding the importance of really having time to be in the same room with one another, to feel one another's energy out. Um, but also, one of the things that I've read was the importance of having employees in person, like within a month of hire, having new people have at least one in-person opportunity. So that way you're building trust in the team.
Ooh, how do you do that for a company like mine?
Are you completely remote?
We are. And I have people North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, and Nevada. And I think there's one other state in there, but I don't recall which one it is.
Yeah, so that might be tricky, but I don't think you have to get overly caught up in that. And here's why. Some of the other research that I've read says that when people want to work remotely, it was either 60 to 7% if they are not able to work remotely, if they have a remote capable position, but their company will not let them work remotely. There's a 60 to 70% of people said that they will leave their job if they can get the remote job that they want. So, from that angle, I don't think you have to worry too much. Um, a lot of people want remote jobs, and there are ways to cultivate community and connection online, right? Many of the people, we're all in Maryland, but at my office, we're still online. We have office hours every week. If people want to hop online, ask questions, or just see someone's face, we have a chat where we post a question of the week. It's just a fun question. They can answer questions to it. And you can do fun things online as well. And I know a practice owner, actually, she has taken her team on cruises. They're a remote team, but she does cruises because she found that that was cheaper than flying everyone into whatever their base camp is. Taking them on a cruise was cheaper than the alternative. So
Wow.
if it's in your budget, that can be an every now and again
People like
option.
cruises.
Yes.
It's funny. Speaking about cruises, um, somebody had asked me how I celebrated my birthday. I was like, oh, it was kind of quiet. I had a dinner with my daughter, which is great. And they're like, oh, that sounds so nice. I was like, even though it was great, I really wouldn't have minded being on a big ship in the Caribbean.
Yeah. It's never too late out there. Those people who celebrate their birthday for like a whole week, a whole month.
Yeah, I'm not one.
You're like, it's done.
It's done. Yep, I've had plenty. So, how many people do you have at your practice?
I never know this answer. I'm always like, how many do we have? We have about 15.
Okay.
We'll go with an about number.
I get it because, we're hiring, firing, people onboarding, offboarding at various different times. So the number fluctuates. So we're usually between 15 and 18.
Hmm.
All right, Melissa, what should I have asked you today that I haven't asked you?
Oh, that's a good question. I ask people that question and I wasn't prepared to answer it for myself. Hmm. Oh, well, I think the thing that I had been thinking about, well, I don't know, maybe we touched on it. Um, but I think that I don't know that it's a question, but just knowing that like taking care of your well-being as a business owner can help your business strategy. I know for me, I've been in retreat mode for literally like a year. And so really I've just been having conversations with helping people understand the value of having community and how retreats can help build community and professional working relationships and also help you with your social supports. But I think you did a great job with your questions. I don't think there's anything I'm like, darn it, I wish we talked about that.
Well, thank you. And how can our listeners find you after the show?
Yeah, so I am on the Dreaming and Doing podcast. So we're on Apple, Spotify, or if you want to go to our website, it's dreaminganddoing.net. And if you are in Maryland and you're looking for counseling services, we have a team of about 15. We offer online counseling services and in person in Baltimore County area. And that website is lifespringcounseling.net.
Perfect. We will make sure that both of those are in the show notes so that people can access them easily. You've been a fantastic guest today, Melissa.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you for joining me for today's podcast, where I focus on women in business and how we can be allies to one another. Please rate us on the podcast app that you listen to the most, and send me any ideas you have for podcast topics or any other feedback. I love to hear from my listeners. You can reach me at Denise@dcavirtual.com.